Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Goju Tech Talk. Today, I want us to continue along the exploration of critical thinking. And we'll start off by asking a simple question, which is what do we think the most difficult programming language is? But before we get into that, I want to share two things. First, in the background, I've got my one of my favorite YouTube channels for music. Uh, Dream Clinic. It's playing The Last Martyr. I think this might be my new favorite. And so if you haven't heard of Clinic, I think I've mentioned them about 2,000 times. You think that I'd be sponsored, but no, I'm doing this just because I really like the folks over at Dream Clinic. I love their music. So if you like sort of dark, uh, ambient music that has no vocals, for me, it's like really good background music for thinking, coding, even writing. Check them out. I think that you may like them. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to share is my deepest apologies that I haven't been doing more VODs. The reason for this is over the last 6 months, we have been super busy with Merly. We've been working on a ton of things, uh, expanding the product, working on really exciting and interesting licensing deals with corporate partners that are integrating our AI into their commercial products that have sort of a global adoption. And that's super exciting. I actually will be able to announce a little bit of that in the coming months of some of the stuff that's going on. And it's super exciting, I think, from my perspective, because while I'm a huge fan of machine learning, I've been doing machine learning for, yeah, almost like I've been teaching machine learning for maybe almost 20 years. And whenever I see something in technology get very lopsided, even if it's something that I love, I start to have questions about what's going on here, right? Like, are we in some weird hype bubble? And I think for sure we're in a massive hype bubble right now with language models. And while I think language models are a very useful tool, I kind of feel like the world has sort of a little bit lost its mind. And I don't love that. Uh, and if you look at the history of our species, there's been many times where something has happened and we kind of lose ourselves and then start to not make necessarily the best decisions based on rationality, but instead it becomes like groupthink, right? And by the way, groupthink is generally it's not necessarily something that you want to do, right? So let's just look this up. At least I think. Yeah, here we go. Groupthink is a psychological phenomenon where the desire for harmony and conformity in a group leads to poor, irrational decision making as members suppress individual dissent to maintain group cohesion. This process bypasses critical evaluation, risk assessment, and consideration of alternatives, often resulting in self deception and negative consequences for the group. I think that's exactly what's going on in the world right now with language models for a large majority of the population. It's sort of like they've lost their minds. And these are smart people, right? These are not dumb people, but I think that they're getting so caught up in conformity of just the blind leading the blind. The outcome of this is we could all be marching, excuse me, toward this cliff. And for those of you who played the game Lemmings, it's like the lemmings all just headed to unalive themselves, right? So, why am I mentioning this? Our adoption into commercial products as a new foundational AI technology that is not stochastic, that is extremely fast, 6 or 7 orders of magnitude faster than language models, yet still fully learned in that it can process and be trained on mass corpora of data. That's incredible, because I think it at least demonstrates to me, I mean, obviously it's nice for Merle, but beyond that, what it demonstrates is some people are starting to at least see that there are alternatives to language models, as well as the ability to think critically and understand that all AI doesn't hallucinate. It's a language model problem, and it's a problem with ML systems, at least to the best of my knowledge, that are stochastic. And so if you build a deterministic machine learning model, or you use deterministic ML methods, then you won't have hallucinations, and they can be relied on almost in the way that you would rely on things like calculators. Not quite, right? Because calculators sort of have very fixed, predefined rules that we know through human knowledge are correct, whereas deterministic learned ML models will be deterministic in their output, but they could still be deterministically wrong. They could still be deterministically incorrect from an objective perspective. But the beauty of the determinism is that if they're deterministic, then you can correct them, and then they will be deterministically correct. And this is not necessarily possible with stochastic systems. So I'm super excited about the fact that Merle's AI models and our new methods of doing machine learning are starting to be adopted. Not, just to be clear, this is not adoption as a commercial product in Mentor. I mean, we have a lot of that, and that's super exciting. But what we're talking about here is existing products that do really advanced things with software, and we're starting to integrate into those products directly, where Merle's AI will become foundational to those products. It's sort of like, maybe a simple example is the way that some AI companies, they have a product that you use, let's say ChatGPT, but they also have the ability to use sort of the APIs that give you access into the models. By the way, most of the reason why they have the APIs in the cloud is that those models are so big, they aren't functional pragmatically on commodity hardware. So what this means is, like, you can't just download the model and run it on your laptop or your phone. There are some cases where you can for very small language models, but there's a loss of richness. But what you're really getting access to, it's not the APIs. The APIs are an interface into the AI model. If the AI models were more compressed and more usable on commodity hardware or things on the far edge, like very lightweight compute, sensors, thermostats, mobile phones, right? Things like that. Not the heavy edge, which is like autonomous vehicles where they have basically like a server running in the trunk. Which, by the way, I've worked on some of those, and it's actually, I think, yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool stuff. We were working with, I think it was BMW, Silicon Valley, and the team we were helping their autonomous vehicle group, and they literally had in the trunk was like a mini data center on wheels. It's kind of fun, but so we're talking about being able to do on-device AI inference without any cloud or any internet, and that unlocks a number of things where you may not have that steady stream. We won't go into all those cases maybe right now, but I'm sure if you think about it for a second, you can probably imagine what some of those are. So this preamble is basically just to say that one, we're getting this, we're making some really awesome breakthroughs at Merly to get commercial adoption of our AI models integrated directly into globally adopted products. And so that's part of the reason why we've been doing less VODs, just so busy with that and fundraising and stuff. But it appears as though things are getting sorted with that. So the higher order bit, from my perspective, is we'll be doing more VODs. So thank you, thank you, thank you for your patience. There's many VODs that I've promised folks. Untranslatable metaphor, I know I owe you at least a couple. One on the SG5, I think, the technical report or the optional feature in C++ for transactional memory. That's in mind. So I plan to do an episode or multiple episodes to explain how that happened, what that looked like, in case some of you are interested in contributing to programming languages at like the standard level and what to kind of expect. And then also doing deeper dives on programming languages, AI systems, all of that. So thank you for your patience. We're going to get to that stuff once we get through this, what we call Merly bursty speed. We're about through this last speed bump. A couple more weeks. So probably by, let's say, early November, I'll start to be doing, hopefully, a bunch of VODs each week. Maybe not every day, but multiple a week, like I was doing for a few months there. So that's my target. One VOD a week, I think, is I don't feel great about that. I want us to be doing more together, learning more, sharing more, all that. So leave that with me. I'm going to work on that. Okay. So those are the two things as the preamble. I think we have those out of the way. And now I would like us to go back to the critical thinking and, sort of in the mindset series, but really this is more about deep critical thinking. And I want to start by us looking at this question of what we think is the most difficult programming language. So I did a bunch of searches and I sort of liked whatever this list is, mostly just because I just wanted a list of programming languages that are used a lot in, I have a tendency to lean toward languages that are used for production to build sort of real products rather than more prototypical systems, prototypes that you might do for a research paper or as a toy. And not that those things aren't important. I love those things. I've done many of those things. We've built a few I think simple programs on this channel, as well as we vibe coded our way to our thumbnail generator, all that stuff. So that's all great. But um, I tend to have this desire to build production quality systems because I think that the world can benefit a lot more from those types of systems than the systems that we build in our garage that just benefit us, right? And truthfully, I think as software developers, I think I've said this many times, is we're in some sense we're the 1%. If you look at it from a literacy perspective, like there was a time in society where a large majority of the world was illiterate. And so the people that could read and write had a superpower over everybody else. If you couldn't read or write, that entire world, books, letters, uh, sending messages to people, like over Telegram or whatever, carrier pigeon, like that's a real thing actually. But if you couldn't read or write, it was closed off to you. It's just gobbledygook, right? It's nonsensical. Now, a large majority of the world is literate in natural languages that we can read and write much more than we could, like, let's say, in the I'm trying to think of the dates here because we just had this on our questionnaire. Uh, let's say like the Dark Ages, right? Like there was an abundance of people that couldn't read or write when we were in the Dark Ages, and truthfully, I think part of the reason why it was the Dark Ages is because people couldn't read or write, and so it's like it's closed off to them, and so they're kind of beholden to the people that can read or write. Just take our word for it, right? And I think that a similar thing is happening or has happened with programming languages, as well as understanding AI systems. But programming languages, I think, are the key when it comes to code. If you can read and write code, you have a superpower. You're part of the group that's literate, and the folks that can't, they rely on us and trust us to like guide them for all the stuff that we're building, right? Just like the coders, in some sense, sort of rule the world. And I think that's cool, but I think that power can be abused, misused, or not deeply even understood enough to where people realize how much power they have and how we should work toward democratizing our ability to create software. I mean, that's one of the primary drivers of machine programming, at least from my lens, is it's the notion that we can democratize programming. And I do think that like vibe coding, as much as I think it's not good for production, I think it is actually a very interesting segue to take people who can't code and then slowly kind of ramp them. Maybe. I think we need more time. I need more time to deeply look at it, but I could see the benefit of it's like you have an idea and then the machine writes the code for it. And then you look at the code and you don't understand it all. And that's okay, right? Like this is the whole point of the Archimedean spiral is when you're doing this spiraling thing and you're starting out here, you don't understand everything. You just understand sort of this stuff, right? Like this is the point of the Archimedean spiral is as you're moving through this, you're getting more and more knowledge. Like just think of this as knowledge, and every revolution of this spiral, you're learning more and more and more. And so when you first start out, you don't know everything, but you start to piece it together and you do iteration over iteration over iteration. It's sort of like with any skill, learning a programming language, learning how to ride a bicycle, learning to speak, learning to play a musical instrument. It's all sort of in the same space, or at least that's the way I think about it. So Um, it's great that we're in this new space of programming, but my view is production quality systems in software are really important because they can level up people that may have illiteracy when it comes to code because they can't build the systems that we have or that we can. And that's why I tend to have a preference over building commercial systems versus non-commercial systems, more research toys. It's like the research toys, they're cool, but I think that it's like they're meant to benefit just us, whereas commercial products, they're meant to benefit a lot of people, and I like that, to help level the playing field. So then more people benefit from software than just the coders. So hopefully that makes sense of why I kind of have this slant for production systems. Okay, so now back to the question, the topic at hand, which is what do we think the most difficult programming language is? And so here's a list of some programming languages, and I I'm not going to share my opinion, but I want to just give everybody time. Yeah, great, cool. We have got 20 languages. These are good languages. Python, C, C++, Java, C Sharp, JavaScript, Visual Basic, Go, Delphi, Object Pascal, SQL, Fortran, Perl, R, PHP, assembly language, Rust, MATLAB, Scratch, Ada, and Kotlin. Okay, great. So there's a bunch there's a bunch more. Uh, so feel free to take a moment and think about which one you think is the hardest or the most difficult from your experience, and then we'll go on to maybe the next step of this critical thinking exercise. And while some of you may be thinking about this, my view is, as far as the hardest language or the ones that are hard, like I definitely don't love the syntax for Rust. Uh, Part of that's probably just I'm so new to it. But yeah, on this list, I don't really think of any of these languages particularly as difficult. There's other ones that I've worked with that are quite hard, especially from a human perspective, like BF, which is I think it's a Turing complete language in the sense that it can solve any problem that like a Turing machine would be able to solve. But it has, I think it's like 9 instructions, and it's wacky. I mean, it's quite strange. And we've actually built a few AI systems using it, and there's some benefits to BF. Part of that is the grammar is so compressed that the ML systems don't have to learn a lot of vocabulary to do interesting things. There's only 9 instructions. Whereas a language like C++, or basically almost any of these, well, maybe with the exception of SQL, SQL is a pretty limited grammar, I think anyway. Some of these can be harder simply because the verbosity or the space of the grammar for different identifiers that are reserved for the programming language, sort of like reserved words and different like idiomatic constructs, like a switch, right? Or a for loop, or a while loop, or a class, or inheritance, and all of that stuff. Okay, cool. So, what's the most difficult programming language? I asked Google this question before we started this, and here's what Gemini said. There is no single most difficult programming language. Difficulty is subjective. Exactly. This is actually the key point that I'm trying to make. And in fact, if we go back one page, this is one of the key pieces of mindset and critical thinking that I think has helped me significantly. There was a time in my life where I used to think that there were things that were easy and then there were things that were hard. And I had this belief that these were sort of universal things. Like programming in C++ is just hard. Um, and riding a bicycle is just easy. And I think as I've learned to improve my ability to think critically, what I think I've realized is that when we think about things that are easy or hard, we're often conflating two things. One of them is something that, and this is just my opinion on this, by the way. This is subjective, and I don't think that this is complete. We're talking about mathematical completeness and soundness. There's other factors related to this outside of what I am just going to describe. But in my view, you can break these things down. Almost any skill that we're developing, whether it's learning to program or learning to ride an electric unicycle, which, by the way, is one of my favorite pastimes. Almost all of these things, principally, like one of the biggest things is if it's a cognitive skill. Physical activities can actually, I think, have a slightly different approach. So let's not consider physical, just like cognitive. So yeah, my bad for mentioning the unicycle. I've just been, I was just on it a couple of days ago, and it made me happy. So it's like a top of mind. Anyway, so when we're thinking about these cognitive skills, what I tend to find as I think about these things more, as we have conversations about critical thinking and mindset, is easy and hard is subjective. It really it's almost wholly subjective. However, simple and complex is, or at least it can be represented objectively. Okay, so here are some examples. I think that it's probably objectively true that the programming language C++ is more complex than most programming languages that are out there. And a simple example of that is C. C++ is, I think, a superset of C. Therefore, C++ must be more complex. And you can actually just draw this as like a Venn diagram, right? And so here's C++ and here's C, right? Which is more complex? C++ must be, because the entire language of C is inside of the space that contains C++. It's not possible for C to be more complex than C++. It's a mathematical view, right? It's like I'm probably gonna get the syntax wrong here, but it's like this. It's like, I think it's like this. Is that right? What I'm trying to say is that C++ is a proper superset of C. Or said another way, yeah, my handwriting is really terrible. Okay, let's figure this out. Okay, which is which? Symbol for subset is this thing. Okay, what's going on here? Okay, this thing. Or this is the proper. Oh, whoops. Okay, yeah, I didn't get it quite right. Sorry. Oh, right, because that's the equal to. My bad. Okay, I'm glad we looked this up. Okay, let's just make this minor adjustment. Okay, that's a proper superset. That's a proper subset. By the way I think about these, just so all of us know, is when I think about sets, I just think about it in terms of greater than and less than. And then it's kind of like going the right way. This is sort of the hack that I have. And then, so yeah, this is the C++ is greater than C in terms of complexity. So it's the set, the Venn diagram that we have, right? And then C is less than C++. And then when you are doing the equality, the proper subset. Yeah, I always get that wrong. Proper subset is not equal to. Okay, yes, right. So this is proper subset. That is actually what I was trying to say. And then the subset is the less than or equal to. So this would be C++ is greater than or equal to C, and C is less than or equal to C++. And then, of course, if you want to translate this into actual code, it'd be like, okay, we're really going down some rabbit holes here, but I think we're all developers, so I think most of us know what I'm trying to say. So hopefully I'm just directionally correct and everybody is getting a sense of what I'm trying to convey. All right, so the point of this, which is actually a very simple takeaway, but I find that it can be very easy to get confused, to confuse ourselves about this when we are learning something new. And it's a mindset thing. It can be tricky in the sense that we can convince ourselves that something is hard. Oh, quantum physics, it's so hard. No, it isn't. That's just how somebody feels about it. Quantum physics is complex. Objectively, yes. But is it hard? That just depends on your fluency with it. For example, if we look at C++ as being a proper superset of JavaScript due to complexity, so we're just talking about complexity here. And look, we have Google over here saying that, yeah, we agree. C++ is super complicated. You got to just know everything. There's also one of the views that I have is if you can master C++, you can probably master any programming language. Not because it's hard, but because it's complex. And most languages tend to be as complex or less than complex. Less complex. And generally speaking, I think most are just less complex. What's interesting, though, is that if we look at this complexity thing that I'm drawing up, and this is try to understand the complexity. So simplicity and complexity are a matter of objectivity. Something is objectively simple in that it just doesn't have that many pieces to it. Arithmetic, right? Something like that. And then complex is it has just a lot of pieces, calculus. What's interesting, though, is so this is very objective. And it's objective because you can write down all the stuff and say, there's more stuff here than there is for this other thing. Another example is, I speculate, football is definitively more and objectively more complex than tennis. Just by looking at all the stuff in football. However, at least for me, tennis is harder than football is. Why? Because I don't really know anything about tennis. I don't know about the love thing. I don't know why they count. It's like 15 to 30 and then suddenly then it's 40. I don't know why that is. All the games and the sets and just like weird things. Like I don't understand it. And even though it's objectively, I think if we're being intellectually honest, it's objectively more simple than football when it comes to difficulty of understanding. I think football is easier for me to understand, and tennis is harder. It's more difficult for me to understand. And therein lies the difference here is that simplicity and complexity are objective in that you can write them down and draw this out as something that is uh, you can't argue with it. It's sort of like, yep, that's what it is. Sort of like driving with manual versus automatic. Driving manual is objectively more complex than automatic. Automatic, you just put it into drive and you just drive. Manual, first gear, second gear, third gear, you have got like a third pedal, which is the clutch. That is definitively more complex. But some people may actually find that driving manual is easier. Why? Because of mastery of the thing. And so the the way to look at this, or the way that I tend to look at this, and this is part of the reason why I say there are no hard things. There's nothing in the world that is sort of like objectively hard. It's all subjective. And so the difficulty is subjective. Simple, so the level of complexity is an objective reality, whereas the difficulty of the thing, not complexity. Complexity is just the number of pieces. Difficulty is like, how do I feel about this? That's mostly subjective. And while there is potentially a correlation, at least initially when you're learning things, that things that are more complex tend to be harder at first. Once you become seasoned in them, it's no longer super clear. It becomes more about effort and your mindset and how much you're going to spend time trying to learn these things. And that's basically it. This is all I wanted to get across as the last VOD on mindset and critical thinking, because I have noticed in my, I don't know, 15 years or so of teaching, and almost 30 years of working in industry, that some people will artificially limit themselves and stay away from things that they think are hard, and they're not hard. There is no hard thing. Like you cannot objectively say everybody in the world thinks this is hard. I don't think C++ is hard at all. It's complex, yes, but it's super easy. I think it's far easier than JavaScript or Python, and it has nothing to do with the complexity. It has to do with my mastery of the or my experience in C++ and my lack of experience in these other languages. And so the mindset part of this, so this is critical thinking, what we're doing here, just being able to critically assess this from a completeness perspective and tease out that these are two different ideas. One of them is objective. You can't argue against it. I mean, if you're being intellectually honest, some people will pretend like, oh, no, I can't argue, and just kind of like walk away from those people, or try to explain how their thinking is kind of not logical, and maybe you'll help them grow, but it's not true. That's not objective reality. On the other hand, there is this other part that is very much subjective, and it largely has to do with experience. So that's the critical thinking part. But there's another piece here. And the piece that I think is related to the mindset portion is that mindset, this is my mindset. this is my mindset. And this mindset has served me, I think, very well in terms of the things that I've been able to do, if those things have resulted in being able to accomplish things that some people might believe are sort of in this space. Like, for example, creating a VC backed company. Merrill's the first company I've created that's VC backed. I don't know anything about VCs. I know nothing. Right. And so I could go into it basically with this view of, yeah, I'm way over my head. And sure, yep, I am. When I first start, I'm going to be over my head. But I've done this so many times. I know that that's the process of learning. It's not that you're dumb if it's has the appearance of being hard. It's simply lack of exposure. And so the way to overcome this is, at least for me, is I have a mindset that nothing is hard. Things are only complex. And don't confuse the two, that things are complex. Break them down into things that are simpler and simpler and simpler until you understand all the basics, right? This is, I think I've got a point here somewhere. Mastering the basics right here. Master the basics. When you master the basics and you understand the basics, then when you go to things that are more complex, those things that are one level, one tier above where you are will oftentimes be demonstrably easier for you because they're no longer complex. If you were to start like right with that thing, instead you're building a base. And mastering the basics is everything at the level that you're currently at is basic. And then once you master that, you go up a level, and now this is the basics. And you go up a level, and now this is the basics. And so basically the idea is everything is basic. Everything is. Because all the stuff that is below the basic level, these are things that you've mastered. It's just principally about effort. Now, obviously, there is some sort of degree of intellectual acumen and all this stuff, which these are immutable qualities. And so I think that if you have some reasonable degree of, or you're born with some natural intelligence where you can think critically about things, I don't think it matters that much if your IQ is 120 or your IQ is 180. What I've seen is that people that are innately significantly less smart than other people that are innately significantly smarter, the dumb people have been able to outwork and outachieve and outperform the super innately smart people purely by effort. It's just effort. They just follow the rules of things that we talk about in GTT. Small footsteps every day. Understanding the difference between something that's objective and subjective. Making sure you master the basics, right? And then things just naturally fall together. And there's a very interesting, I encourage all of you to check this out. There's a really interesting talk that Richard Feynman gave when he was winning the Nobel Prize for physics. And by the way, Feynman is one of my favorite scientists of all the scientists that I've studied. And part of the reason why I love him so much is he has a very similar view. Is they're asking him, is it possible for an average person to achieve what you've achieved? Like, can a normal person do the incredible things that you've done, like win the Nobel Prize? And his response was basically like, absolutely. I'm proof of that. And the interviewer is like, what do you mean? I am the average person. There's nothing special about me. I don't have superior intelligence. I don't have the genius gene. I just found a topic that I was very deeply interested in, and I maintained a huge amount of effort, extremely disciplined in learning constantly over a prolonged period of time. And then slowly that knowledge reached a level of maturation, which allowed me to sort of discover things that have moved us forward. And it's really ultimately about effort. It's not about, so if you were to talk to like a sociologist, in fact, my ex-wife and I would argue about this all the time. I'm a huge fan of things being nurture. And it's not to say, I understand that there is a nature element. There are aspects of immutable qualities, where you're born, when you're born, uh, did you win the lottery for like really rich parents? Could that work for you? Could that work against you? I mean, it's actually far more complicated than, you want to be born in the United States as a white man to really rich parents. I mean, that may sound like, and sure, that, like, just to be clear, my view is I'm extremely blessed having those things. Although I don't think I had super rich parents, but I realized that I'm playing life in some sense like on easy mode, in that I won the lottery, and I had nothing to do with it. But I know a lot of other people that have sort of like won the lottery better than I have, but they don't have the effort. They don't have the drive. And sometimes when you win the lottery in such a profound way, it has the appearance of looking like you're playing life on easy mode, when in fact you're actually playing life on hard mode because of the gifts that you've been given. For example, if you're born into a family that's super, super affluent, I think that can be a massive disadvantage for people, because parents tend to not want their children to suffer too much. And if they have the ability to avoid that suffering, they probably will do that. Yet, if you look at many of the people that have achieved some of the most profound things, that have advanced science, or they've created brilliant music, or they've come up with incredible philosophy, almost all of those people have suffered tremendously, which have taught them things like perseverance, drive, unwavering focus. So, this is a topic for another time, but the point that I'm trying to make is, we might think we have an understanding of what being born into life on easy mode looks like, but I'd be really careful that some of the gifts that I think we think are gifts, for example, like the IQ thing is another one. I know a lot of people that are superiorly gifted with their IQ, far more than I am, and it's actually worked against them. And part of the reason why is life in the early stages has been so easy for them. They haven't developed habits on how to study. They haven't really had to try to learn things that are more complex, like quantum physics, while everyone else has. They've learned the discipline, the how to be studious, all of these things. And then you get them in a graduate level, or as like in a senior position in a company, and they struggle. Even though they're innately brilliant, their mind is able to solve things really fast. They don't have the discipline, because they didn't have to learn discipline, because they were gifted, right? So the gift actually becomes a curse. The point that I'm trying to make is, we might be it might be a mistake to openly think that someone that's born beautiful, is tall, has all of this. Like, for example, I mean, this is really leaning into this immutable quality. Some of the most incredible inventions and achievements, both beneficial and maybe tyrannical, have been done by men that are not tall. Not tall. Why? I think that being tall can be a curse, because a lot of people think that if you're tall, you're special. So you're gifted. It's sort of like uh, being beautiful. It's you're on easy mode. And so people just give you stuff. What does this do? This often hurts you because you don't have to struggle as much. You don't have to work as hard as somebody that was not born tall or that wasn't born with the beauty gene, right? And ultimately then what happens is it looks like it's a blessing at first, and these people over here are cursed, and then it swaps. Like there's a period of time where this person that has all the immutable qualities that we would consider gifts is in the lead, and then this person, these people over here who don't have the gifts, they don't have the advantage, and so they have to make up for it by development, personal development. These guys, they don't have to. And so because they don't have to, oftentimes what happens is they don't. Now, that's not to say that this is universal. I know some people that are tall and beautiful and whatever, and they still push themselves, right? That's great, right? I think that there's even interesting sort of perspectives. Sorry, my things switching to the next song. There's even some redundant or cyclic perspectives when you go down this rabbit hole where the gift actually turns into a curse. But if you have the gift, you realize that it's a curse and you view it as a curse. And now it's a double gift because not only like this is probably, I'm not explaining this very well, but it's like you don't just level up. So the people that, let's say, are over here that don't have the gifts, what can sometimes happen is they can become jaded. They can think the world's very unfair. And so there's a stigma in their head where they kind of despise the people over here. Which I think, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but this can happen, and I've seen it happen. Like I think that it's pretty common for, well, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I think the woke mob might come and try to attack me. But what can happen is these people can have a stigma against these people. These are the blessed ones. What's really interesting is that if the blessed people can realize their blessings and understand they are blessings, they're not things that they've earned, they can then see that they are advantaged in life and then work as hard as the people over here, yet they don't have the stigma because they understand that this was a gift. And so these other people that also have the gift, they may not have to work hard, but they have a lot more respect for the people over here. These people will often become far more grateful to have these people, the ones that are enlightened, see that they're disadvantaged. And now they're building bridges all around, right? So there's like levels to this. It can get meta on meta on meta is what I'm trying to say. So I'd be careful to immediately sort of write down that, oh, if you're gifted with these things, you're playing life on easy mode. And if you're not, you're playing life on hard mode. I think it's actually far, far more complicated. But I do think that they are still immutable qualities. And ultimately, if you have an immutable quality that supposedly is leveling you up, I think one of the best things you can do is realize that you did nothing for that and don't take that for granted. Don't be proud of that. You didn't do anything for it. This is why I often say, like, stop praising yourself for being smart. You didn't do anything for it. Praise yourself for things that you did, like knowledge. Knowledge you did do because you learned stuff. Being physically fit, you did do because you did the exercise. Getting degrees, and I don't mean this in sort of an elitist way. I mean this in sort of a very authentic way. You did do. You put in the work and you took the courses and you studied and whatever. Like that is effort. That is action. You actually did something rather than just being sort of born a certain way. And yeah. So anyway, that's all that I have for today. I wanted to do this last one on mindset and critical thinking. And again, going back to how this is related to mindset, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, is my view is nothing in the world is objectively hard. Things are just simple or complex, and we decide through effort if they are going to be easy or hard based on how much time we put into learning these skills. This is my strong-ish claim. So with that, thanks everybody. Once Merle gets through this next speed bump, I promise we'll be doing more VODs. I deeply appreciate your patience. I'm super sorry that we haven't had more. Thank you so much for being patient with me, and stay amazing.